and thank you for joining us here at Finding the Healer Within, where it's our purpose to find you a resource and connection to the healers that you need to find the healer within you. And today we're here with Elena, a person who is a birth justice worker for more than 7 years, a doula, a traditional healer, and so much more in the Austin community, as well as in San Antonio and even here in Houston. How are you doing today, Elena?
Hi, Adriana. Thank you for having me. Just really grateful to be here, to be connected to you, and take some time today to be present. So, no, I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for joining us and for all the work that you do as a healer. Because if you can tell us a little bit about how you got to working as a birth justice worker and a doula.
Mm, yeah, absolutely. Um, Everything is like a spider web, right? Everything is interconnected. But if, like you specifically asking about the doula and the justice work, I can clearly, remember that intention and that shift in my life. And so I was already practicing a lot of healing arts and changing like my lifestyle, trying myself always to heal. Like my number one offering that I share with people, my passion, my intention with this is because I'm constantly in a state of healing. And so as I'm growing and going through things that I'm like, every time I'm offering or sharing or holding space, then it's a reciprocated thing. Like I'm healing as well as sharing the journey at the same time. Because what you mentioned earlier about sometimes healing is really ignited and uplifted after experiencing like really, dark or shadow work in our own lives. And so that's, as I think it's part of the human experience. So I'm no different. So the ignite, the flame started with that because I have survived being a teen mother and a teen parent,
Mm-hmm.
and that was very traumatic for me. Um, it's a blessing, and it changed my life forever, and it birthed me into being a mother. And I'm grateful, and I respect my destiny. But the systems that are in place, the shame, the guilt, um, the discrimination, right? The isolation that is specifically placed on children who birth children is really one of the most toxic things in our society today, because all birthing persons, all parents, all mothers, deserve to be respected and to be held in community, um, to reclaim a lot of our practices and cultures and traditions that have been taken away from us. And so not only have we lost that on a society level, but then we implement this colonization of like um, shaming, right, and degrading. We
Mm-hmm.
already don't have a good connection with children and elders in our society. So on top of that, like even more shame and blame on a teenager who is in a situation where they choose, are they going to give life or move in a different direction? And like that autonomy is really important. So I
Definitely.
had just one of the darkest experiences, even on my family level. I was isolated, I was not well, I had really deep PTSD and trauma, and I just cried all day with my baby for a long time. And we just cried through it and we survived. And I reflect, and sometimes I just don't know how or why, but I see what I needed.
Mm-hmm.
And, I wanted to reclaim that. And so I needed support. I needed my community. I needed mental health healing. I needed physical healing, right? Herbal healing. I needed all of that. And I didn't get it. And then when I had my second child, it was also in the hospital. So a lot of those triggers were, reignited as well.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a more empowered place, but I wouldn't say I was informed or educated about the process of like going in and having a baby. I really just trusted like the system because for generations it's what I've been taught. Now then I was able to have a third child, and I chose that time for my reclamation of choosing to create a birth experience that could heal some of the traumas that I had before, and informing myself and embodying it to change my life. And so I doulaed myself. I was like my own doula. I had never heard of doulas. I had not really heard of midwives or parteras in my first two experiences. I think that in general, this country's done a great job of like the oppression and suppression of like normal, like demonizing that work.
Yes.
Um, and so that the medical institutions, right, could be upheld. And
Hmm.
so just in my family, we knew like grandmas and grandmothers had their children at home, but that wasn't a thing anymore, right? You go to the hospital, this is what you do. So I was very naive in those two experiences. And so this third time, just feeling very empowered and informed. And I did experience, a shadow during that time as well that really then just deepened, my purpose with this work is I went through a separation in my marriage at 7 months pregnant. And I
Wow.
realized how when people go through death or separation or divorce while being pregnant, how like that was not talked about ever. All the
Yeah, that
childbirth
experience.
preparation is all this other things, which is a million and thousand things, but this shadow work of being able to be supported while you're pregnant, but while you're grieving and
Hmm.
enduring like some dark moments in your life is wasn't really there. And so, even through that grief, I from 7 months to 9 months then really had to prioritize myself to make sure that I was healthy enough to move forward with a home birth. And I was able to do it because of all the tools. And I thought in that moment, this is why I know how to do breathing exercises, calm my nervous system, all these things. And I had to apply them to myself to be able to, like, my midwife was like, if you want to have this home birth, your vitals, your health has to be at a certain, right, like place, in a certain
Hmm.
place. And if not, then there's other risks that play into, and and maybe home is not going to be the safest place. So I was so determined, that just like I practiced what I knew, and I just kept applying it and applying it, and was
Hmm.
able to have a home birth. And then from that moment, wants everyone to feel informed and empowered and educated. It doesn't have to be a home birth, it can be a hospital birth, a free birth, a birth center birth, whatever kind of birth we want, that we choose, that we have that autonomy, and that we are awakened as a society to support each other, to come into community, to uplift parents during a transitional time, to care about the seven generations that come after us and have come before us, and to reconnect ourselves into that, has been just a part of my passion. And that's really how like I went forward, and I never looked back.
That's awesome. That's amazing. And it's really true what they say that um, even children in the same family will never have the same parents at the same time because, or, parents when they're growing up, because you have, for example, you have three children, and each one was a different part of your growth, and understanding of life. So each one is going to get a different version of you, but at the same time, it's always going to be better, like it just in your situation, because it's you're focusing on growth and understanding the things that our ancestors put in place for us to be able to connect with our bodies and listen to our intuition as well. But in the work that you do with birth justice work, what does that entail usually? Like, do you go and try and change laws in order for things to be better for women, especially here in Texas? I imagine that's difficult.
Yeah, I'm a praying woman, and that's where it mostly stems from, um, because I think that you know there's so many different layers of this work, and we, depending on where we're at and how we can serve and what our capacity is, it will flow up and down, similar to when earlier you and I talked about the red road, right? Being on the
Mhm.
red road, what does that mean? Sometimes it does mean being out there and protesting and gathering at in places, um, and then sometimes it can look like making phone calls, right, and really being active behind the screen and on our computer, um, and then it can be applied in our lifestyle. So it's just like a similar thing with this work, is that full spectrum reproductive justice work. is really where like now I'm seated. Like I've been planted there and I'm seeding, and that's where I'm growing, is because it's full spectrum. Doulas have been around before even the word, right? We've always
Hmm.
had somebody in our, who shows up in those times of death, who shows up in those times of birth and life, in those times where we're really in the deepest transitions of our lives, and that's doula work, right? So that's anybody. Sometimes I would have women be like, "Well, I saw my sister, I supported my sister." I was like, "Then you're a doula." Or sometimes if there's like a partner, a father, I'm like, you're also a doula. Like we're all doulas. It's actually a
Hmm.
conscious choice of how we're like choosing to show up and to support. So that full spectrum reproductive justice is just really again about the sovereignty of our bodies, the information and the choices that we have, the accessibility and resources to choose whatever the fuck we want to choose.
Right.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. It's a full spectrum. It's that holistic health is like whole, right?
Yes.
Um,
Everything's.
everything. And that's our ancestral ways. And that's what, I've chosen to come back to. So it's all integrated. Um, and so full spectrum also just depends on where a person is in their life, right? Sometimes the reproductive justice help is about information in regards to your fertility towards menopause and that shifting and changing. Or is it your fertility when you're first receiving your cycle, right? And you're able to like, what does that entail? Whether even in, for both masculine and feminine, right? Celebrating that fertility in our bodies, understanding that we can create life at this point in our biological aspect of being a human. And so, therefore, we should have, our choices and have the support and the transparency to be able to live our most authentic selves. And so, it doesn't matter, or a word about loss in pregnancy, right? Does
Hmm.
someone then not deserve a support person or a doula, through that? No, hell, more than ever, right? Every
Right.
phase is full
Hmm.
spectrum. If you're going to go out and have an abortion, or you're a teen, parent, and you're trying to be informed and choose, then what better for me to come in and serve and hold that role as a gateway to information, to help feel informed, to help feel not judged, to help feel that compassion and that respect. And that's what I've dedicated my life to, is honoring each one of us, right, in this journey. And then in return, I'm also honored, right? There's things that people are like, no hay palabras, there's no
Yes.
words to say what, you did for our family and for, this experience. And I
Hmm.
humbly, receive, but I also remind I am just the smallest speck, right? Like if we're this is part of the biggest ocean wave that's changing, and I'm grateful to be, even the small speck and make that much of an impact. Because there's an aspect too that I believe, no matter how we're born, is like also a frequency that we carry for the rest of our lives. And
Hmm.
so sometimes some of us, including me, were born, in a very sterile, cold environment, with a person who is going through a traumatic experience birthing me, and all these things. And that vibration sets us up for the rest of our life. And
Hmm.
so then where we as parents maybe get to choose, I want to welcome this person, this soul, warmly. And then what does that look like? A lot of times it looks like ancestral, because our ancestors were very in tune with the ceremony of death, with the ceremony of life, and that indigenous science is I'm committed to it, and that's what I live by. And so there's so many aspects to that, as to like what full spectrum reproductive justice care looks like. And yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Because, like you said, we all need support in whatever level or whatever decision that we make. Like you said, there's death doulas, there's life doulas, there's all these different kinds of doulas because it's like a trend. you're transitioning from one state to another. Like you said, when we start being able to reproduce, our bodies change, and that comes with, it's a lot of misunderstanding, sometimes shame, depending on your family or the mentality that they have on it. And for me, it was always like, oh, aren't you ashamed of this, aren't you ashamed of that, or no te da vergüenza? And I'm like, not really. Am I supposed to? Because you're confused. You're like, I don't feel like I should have shame, but you think I'm supposed to be ashamed of something. And
Mm,
even with, especially with, like you said, children having children, when what they really need is understanding, and for someone to stand beside them and say, I'm here for you, I'll hold in, this energy here for you. And that never really resonated with me until I started holding space for people at the place that I work. Do you find that difficult to be able to be that liaison between the energies in the room, like as a doula, or even with the retreats that you do?
yeah, it's no. Um, I have to acknowledge the doula in you from what you just shared, because that is you being a doula too, changing your tone, changing your vibration, and
Hmm.
choosing to like relay a message to the person in a different way. And you having like that ability to do that. So that's incredible. I really understand that. Um, it's an art. It's an art. It's an art that I continue to attune to. It's it's bringing back the esoteric aspect of life that we so dismiss, right? We're so in
Hmm.
um, just ingrained and conditioned in the 3D and what that means, and that is so far from what is the truth, right? And so it's an art to work with energy, to recognize energy, to be able to shift energy within yourself through breath, through healing, through physicality practices like body work or meditation, or whatever it is that brings that healing to you. Then you start to recognize that we are like empowered, we can shift and change, you know, our body responses, our nervous system, um, the way it's coordinating in that moment. And so then it continues to cultivate where then maybe for me through the art and study of Reiki, right? And
Hmm.
understanding the Japanese lineage of like healing, but then having a complete awakening to just like, well, it's in all cultures and traditions. It's just called something different, right? And so whether we're saying healing hands or Reiki or Nasobada, right? It's the same. So then having that information and those experiences and that education around what energy is, um, and then to embody it in places where it can influx and impact other people. And so through myself and being conscious of what I'm wearing, what stones I'm carrying, how my breath is, how present I am, no matter what the fuck is going on in my life, which is not always the easiest thing. Then I choose consciously to be like, this is here, but this is also another part of the reality. This is 3D, but now let's enter 4 and 5D, right? Where I can shift and come into someone else's experience and, not bring whatever it is that I'm in going through and hold space. And so, one of my sisters and I, we have a shirt that says like birth workers hold space. And like it's an impactful statement because it's an art, it is an art, and it isn't always easy. It isn't always easy. There's aspects of it that also I've caused harm, I'm sure, in people's experiences, unintentionally. Or, it's not always where it's like this, great thing. But holding space, there's a certain responsibility and accountability and an integrity, right? That you choose to like be in even a leadership role, I'll say, because as an advocate, right, actively in a hospital room, then I'm choosing to be in a leadership role. I'm choosing to use my voice to be assertive, to make sure that the birthing person's wishes are respected, to make sure that there's an understanding and there's, in the exchange between like the medical staff and the families. Um, and so, yeah, it's, and being in the hospital is like the front lines of this war. I've experienced my most traumatic experiences as a birth worker in the hospital settings, in the medical settings. And, one of the reasons that I'm even committed to this work, and the main reason is, yes, my own experiences that I shared with you earlier, but a lot of times acknowledging that the infant and maternal mortality rate of Black people in this country is genocide, right? And Black and Brown people in this country, through our experiences, sometimes in these medical systems, in the most vulnerable time of our life of being pregnant or needing an abortion or whatever it is that we're doing with reproductive justice care, that we're not listened to, that we're not treated, with respect, that we're dismissed, we're harmed, and there's violence, right, that comes with that. Um, that's put on us predominantly and mostly in this country, and therefore is a reflection on the infant and maternal mortality rate of dying at such a higher rate, than other folks. And so, I think that me having that intention and that acknowledgement and that honor, and then translating into how it feels to hold space and how it is to be this conduit of energy, of information, of wisdom, whatever it is the person needs, then that's it. But I still cultivate it every time. It's never gonna end until I shift and maybe choose it to in that way, but I don't think so. I feel like this is my life's purpose. I'll continue to study traditional midwifery, and to try to just continue to tune in the 5D.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's what's necessary, I think, for people to understand that the importance of having a doula advocate for you, because you're in a state, I've heard people give birth and it sounds like, they're in a state of a lot of turmoil. Your whole body's being activated, all your energy is being used, and you need someone to tell them beforehand, this is what I want, this is what I want to do. Just like someone who's going into the hospital for a procedure, you got your ancestors there, and sometimes, we may not always feel our ancestors there, but they're there when at every stage in our life, whenever we need help, we can call upon them to make things happen in our life, to push us and give us that extra edge necessary to like leave everything at the door, like you said, as a doula, and make sure you focus on the thing at hand, which is bringing a life into the world. But
Mm.
uh, just kind of going like on the other spectrum, like a death doula. What is exactly a death doula for those who don't know?
It's again, I think doula or support person across the board, no matter where it's implied, is that you're holding space physically, emotionally, spiritually, right? And even mentally. But sometimes if there's even a team, right, and someone has like their mental therapist, as well as a death doula, as well as a supportive family, as well as supportive friends and community, then that's the whole integrated system. And so for a death doula, it's about, depends. It depends on, just like birth, the experience of the death, right? Was it traumatic? Was it sudden? Um, was it expected? Was it, from chronic illness? Has it been a long journey, towards death, right? Through cancer or things like that. So it's really individualized because everybody's experience is unique and individual. And so then that's how someone who holds space as a support person or a doula then can conform to exactly what the family needs. And so in cases of, cancer, sometimes it's really long and drawn out. Sometimes it's really sudden, right? And it just happens very quickly. And so it's that's again, that's for every part of the death experience. So it depends if someone reaches out looking for support where they are in the journey, right? And what they need exactly. And so then for someone who's supporting someone through death, it looks like sharing, tools and resources to navigate your nervous system through the grief process, to share resources and tools on different ways to grieve, right? That may not have been passed down to us through our family or through the generations. And we have like a broader spectrum of like, oh, okay, I can actually grieve in all these different ways and it's honored and seen, you know, um, to being a support person for the whole family, right? Maybe who is the death impacting? Most of the time, that immediate community, that immediate family. So then it doesn't mean being just a doula to like one person. It could be if if that's the situation, but a lot of times it's for the whole family, which is the same in birth, right? The whole, even the animals are going to feel a transition of a baby being brought home new, and so it's like holding space for everybody. Um, and in death, going through again some of that grieving with the family and with the person, practicing what they most resonate with to grieve, right? And then encouraging that they're getting, that mental health aspect, what their spirituality calls for that they need. Emotional release and techniques can be found a lot of times through movement and through meditation and through breathing exercises. And so, bringing all of that to someone to navigate, and grief never ends, but usually as a death doula, it's, during a certain heightened time of the loss, and really being activated then, but understanding and realizing that all these families, all these people that I'm connected to through this work, it's for a lifetime, right? We carry this connection beyond that experience, but maybe that's when I'm most active, and when you're seeing me, and when we're talking, and when we're going through it, and when we have a time frame, right, in regards to the exchange of what we agreed to go through. Maybe they're hiring a death doula for, just a month or quarterly, right, to check in. And so how I choose to show up and be available also impacts. So it's just very unique, very individual. But it's not talked often about, and so I try to keep birth and death right alongside, because that's really the truth of what it is.
I mean, being a birth doula in and of itself is all encompassing. You're bringing something in, but as well as being a death doula, because it's not something that's really spoken or understood as well, even less so than a birth doula, I feel. But it's definitely necessary. Like I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts from Mayim Bialik's Breakdown, and she was kind of going into that about how she had grieved her father's passing, that she, spent a year with a grief counselor, and how much it helped her navigate the grief and understanding, which a lot of us don't get a chance to do. Just either culturally, you just kind of go to the funeral, you make sure, you cry a little
Even
bit.
those practices, like where are they
Mhm.
rooted from? Where do they come from? What business death is now to us, right? And how more and more often we see that we have to collect funds just to be able to go through the traditional, what the society sees as like healthy. And it's really traumatic, and it's really, capitalistic during another vulnerable time in our life, and that's not what we need. And we can bury our loved ones in many different ways. And sometimes the finances do impact, right? That. But I think more so than anything, being reminded of our choices.
Yeah, the inevitable choices that we all have to grieve in whatever way that we need to, in order to
Mm-hmm.
be better off, so that we can be there for the people who need us, or just being there for yourself, because it's not everybody has a family. Sometimes it's just one person trying to make it through life, kind of thing. But
Yeah.
as a traditional healer, like what tradition, because you said you're Puerto Rican, right? Are you have
Mm-hmm.
any connection with the Taino people as
Absolutely. Absolutely. I am a Tequina. My Taino name is Leoniopia, and I'm very proud to represent the Concilio Taino Guatumacu, Boriquen, and Texas. And Atequina is a leader of dance, a leader of prayer, a leader of the women, a teacher of the traditions. And yeah, my Taino lineage and connection is a very, very strong um, aspect of my life, my spirituality, and the practices that I've been able to learn and reclaim. And I've been committed and a part of this tribe for almost 10 years. Um, and it started just by going to a cultural center with my family and learning about our Puerto Rican lineage and history and culture through dance, through song, through community, through food. But that part of the indigenous spirituality of the Taino people was very calling to me at a time where I myself was grieving the loss of my grandfather. And, um, it really helped me understand death on a different level and with a whole different perspective, and to leave behind for me a lot of the trauma that was carried on from my family and my mom losing her mom at a very young age, and that death always had to be, or as I perceived it, had to be traumatic and sad, and everyone's distraught and something that you could never heal from even 50 years later. That's how long my grandmother has been passed away. And I see that in my tias and my tios and my mom, and I pray, for that healing for them. And I was, chosen to have that brought to me in my journey, and I chose it, and it chose me, and it just changed so many perspectives. I started to learn about the deities, Atabe, Semihin, Korokote, different semis, different energies of my ancestors, different prayers, different forms of praying, which is mostly dancing. The Taino people are a people of praying and dancing. And so, being able to pray and dance with my family and in a tribe on the homelands was life shifting. And so then I bring that back to Texas, and I try to be that representation, because particularly with Taino people, there's that mythology of that we are extinct, right? And we no longer exist. And I am a product and a daughter of the diaspora. And that's just, that is a part of me reclaiming who my indigenous ancestors are, what the culture and the practices are. And it's just deepened. I don't think I had an intention, like when I came across the path, how long I was committed. But this is, the elements, nature, and these practices are my church. They are my beliefs. They are, it's what who I am and what I've chosen to pass on to my children. And my oldest son really was, able to witness and live between shifting from Catholicism, which is what me and his father were, you know, conditioned and brought up in, right, in that religion. But then, my oldest son was able to completely witness like this transformation for us as a family that felt more authentic. It felt more in alignment with who we were as a family. And yeah, I think it's really important. So it's work that I'm committed to this day. We try to have gatherings here. Texas is really big, right? And so sometimes it's not so easy to be like, well, we're the extension of Concilio Taino Guatemacu in Texas. If you're like, farther away from Austin. But for the folks that are around Austin, San Antonio, Dallas, Houston, for the most part, there's this activism and connection between us where we can come together and we can just pray and learn about our Taino lineage and practice with protection, practice to pass on, and practice to protect, right? I think that's an important part of it. And so my journey, that looks like sometimes I do travel to Puerto Rico, and I am a part of the bigger tribe and connected to the chief there always. and the work with, the other folks in leadership in the pueblo. Um, and it's not easy. It's definitely not easy. There's been some changes within my family dynamics that have affected my work. You know, as a Tequina in the pueblo here in Texas, but it's something that I think, as long as we want to know about our past, we want to know about our history, we want to learn about where we come from and our people, that there's other people that want to too, or that have gained experience and wisdom. And a tribe and a pueblo is one of the strongest forms of community that we can have, where there's abuelas, there's abuelos, there's the children, there's the chiefs, there's the medicine women, right? There's the daughters, there's the mothers, there's the brothers, there's the men, the warriors, the animals, all of the essences of the elements. We are at our most heightened. And I think that that's mostly, what I've learned on my journey, um, as a Taino. And Lianiopia stands for spiritual woman, and that was a name that my chief was able to talk to me and get to know me and have that uploaded and then shared with me, and that I honor. And so when I remember what my name signifies and what I'm chosen to do, then it's just, I surrender. And then if I'm chosen to cross paths with other people who just so happen to be Puerto Rican or just so happen to want to know about the Taino lineage, but then the diaspora, you don't have to be Puerto Rican, right? The diaspora is that we are all a crossing of the altars with our mixed blood and our mixed lineages. And it just depends on where in your life and what ancestors you're called to, right? To like hone in. And I also am Mexican. And so a lot of times, I felt a lot of shame with like crossing the altars in that way of like, okay, these are Taino practices, or are these my, practices of my people of the Olmeca, right? My Mexica practices. And it's like, I am the crossing of the altars. So what does that mean? Then I have the consciousness and that responsibility to like choose and respect both lineages. But as a Tequina and my Taino lineage, um, it's what I'm mostly embodying at this moment of my life. And I respect, and sometimes we have ancestors that weren't, you know, um, in a position to like pass on great things. And so even asking for forgiveness for those parts of myself and those ancestors that have impacted my life. But spirituality is a huge part of the healing journey and finding the healer, as we say for this show, finding the healer within yourself. um, that's how I was able to, is by tapping into my ancestral lineage and to have an awakening of the plants, of the herbs, of the roots, of the trees, of the medicine, of learning how to make medicine with my hands, make medicine with blood, make medicine with, you know, um, sacred parts of the plants, is then we start to reawaken to many, many more things. So, Daka Rotaino.
Yeah, that's really beautiful, and it's really exciting as well because, um, as a person who hasn't always lived with hope her whole life, it's really makes me hopeful because I see what it is that I've been wanting to see in the world, which is people getting connected back to their roots. Not only that, but also showing their children how to follow these rituals and ceremonies so that they are always whole, and they're never feeling less than or half of themselves, and they can understand, even if they have mixed heritage, that you are both. There's strength in both, there's wisdom in both, no matter what pieces of the puzzle you are. But that's really beautiful that
Exactly.
you're able to connect not only yourself to something that you're disconnected from for so long, but also instill that in your children so that they know exactly who they are, understanding that we're all pretty much the same
Oh,
people
absolutely.
with different
Yeah.
ceremonies, different medicines, depending on which parts of the world we were. But after reading, like the book on the Hopi Indians and how they traveled through so many different parts of Arizona, Sonora, and Mexico, all the way down to Peru, and it's beautiful because that kind of that book opened my eyes to the understanding that we are everywhere and there's evidence of
Mhm.
it. There's
Mhm.
pyramids, there's hieroglyphics, there's pictographs, there's all this information that our ancestors left for us so that we could always understand and be connected, which will never go away because it's in the blood of the earth, it's in the rocks of the earth, the herbs, and everything. And that's something that the colonizer will never be able to take away because
Never.
it's in our blood. It's who we are.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
as a traditional healer that you do, like you've done the work and things like that. But of course, the work is never finished because it's just
Mhm.
a part of life, a part of growing. And but how do you keep yourself centered and focused on that growth?
Um, so it's interesting that you specifically are wording it in that way because currently, right now, I am going through a finalization part of the divorce process. And I am feeling, my vibration be shifted in a way that takes me to the realms and the places of depression and darkness and wounds and triggers. And I'm in the I feel like the most intense part of it right now. I feel like I'm in the most intense part of it as I'm, you know, finalizing shifting my life and sharing my life with someone who I've shared my life with for over 20 years. And so it's like how it's like you're asking, asking this, and it's like this is today, this is current, this is like what I'm choosing, to do. And the way I'm getting through it is like the way that I get through all the other experiences is by continuing to practice what I know will help bring more equilibrium and harmony and peace to my spirit. Leaning on community, being able to receive during a time of need has been huge. Being fed nourishing meals, being listened to throughout my grieving process and feel like I'm being heard, right? These practices of like my humanity through the dark experiences in my life, and I consider this to be one of the biggest because that's what it feels like right now. And so, I think the way that I usually move from that place is the practice. I have to keep practicing. Maybe I don't believe it. Maybe I don't want to. Maybe I don't feel like it. Um, but I know the wisdom of it. I know what my elders have taught me. I know what my teachers have taught me. And them teaching and sharing in a place for me not to activate and utilize doesn't make sense for me, right? It's been shared, it's been passed down, it's been, protected and passed to me. And so it's like, have more honor for myself, have more compassion for myself, take care of myself because I believe we're all wounded, right? And so then if I move from this place of, I do resonate with like wounded healer, but I also resonate with like healing healer, right? Because we all are healers. We all can find this within ourselves. It just depends. But it's like, you know, how we I can't just talk about this shit, right? I can't just be like, this is da 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 da, and be so experienced in my life that it just comes very naturally. Like there's an aspect of authenticity that I have to live it, and that's why I'm able to connect with people. Most of my work through word of mouth, most of the things that I do being passed on through networking connections in that way, and that's because there's an authenticity felt from my vibration that I'm still in the experience and that we're moving together and that I'm a reflection and we're reflections of each other, right? And so then that helps me get through whatever I have to get through. Um, and walk the walk, not just talk the talk. And that's sometimes so cheesy, but it's the shit that I always have said throughout all of my nonprofit organizational work. Like, no, we should not move from this place of like more capitalistic ideals when we're trying to create a grassroots connection in the organization. Where is there a gap? And usually it's the walking and the talking. Are we practicing? Are we embodying? are we being the lifestyle that we're trying to be committed to and impact communities? So it goes even on an individual aspect for myself, right? Um, and I've been authentic. People have reached out to me for healing these past few days, and I've been like, I'm not well, right? This is my time and place. I am not a part of corporate where I'm always open and I'm always on. If I'm not well, I cannot serve, I have to serve myself. I have to learn how to get better in myself. And I'm usually, that people respond to that, right? Like, thank you for being honest. Thank you for telling me. I'll pray for you. I'll pray for your family. I'll pray that you can get better and get through this. And that helps me too. So being transparent about where I'm at all the time in my journey is, I think is a really part of how I can navigate it, and I'm just doing the best I can. I'm not doing so great right now, Adriana, just with like emotions, but then I go see people who can help me, right? My acupuncturist, my therapist, people who uplift me and can help me so that I can get better because I can't do it by myself. And if I tell other people that, then again, the same applies to me. And being a healer, there's this stigma. And I just read recently something that really impacted me of like how we have to, a lot of times we hold so much energy from other people and so much stories and vibrations from other folks on top of that of ourselves. And then we're in this place of never really truly being able to release that. Therefore, our lifespan is lessened because we choose to commit to do the work of healing vibrational and frequency, and this earth is really messed up. And I refuse. I'm like, let's change that. Let's change. And I see myself going down that because it's so strong. It's so strong. It's just like so self-sacrificing, right? To do this work, but to go through your own experiences and be impacted and carrying by others. So then no, I have to do things to cleanse, to release, to limpia, to barar myself, to have teachers, to have elders and people that I can go to heal. And then I can come back to a place where I can share with others once I'm, nourished and in a place of more balance. Because I think there's always stuff going on. It's if it's not a divorce, and maybe it's not being able to pay the light bill. Maybe it's transitioning into single parenthood or stuff going on at work. Just as it's like it's something's always going on. It's just how we choose to respond, and how we learn to respond is a important part of how I'm doing it.
That's beautiful. Yeah, and it's so true and honest in the way that you're saying it because it is a struggle to disconnect from someone no matter how long you've been with them. But having that strength to say, I know what place I'm in and I'm going to be authentic and tell people that I can't be there for them right now because I'm going through my own process of healing, and that's part of the practice. Like, but with that authenticity of and honesty of being able to tell people, I can't do this right now. I can't help you. And them understanding and just simply saying, okay, I understood, I get it. And I'm gonna, take a step back and I'll get back with you in the future, or even just being there for you and saying, I'll pray for you. I'll be there for you. Just extending that energy. Some people may think that it's just a cop out, but some people really do mean it. And they're going to sit for a second, think about the situation and make sure that they send you that good energy that they're trying to send you. But what kind of work do you do within that realm of sex work?
Mm. It is very much a part of reproductive justice work, right? Sex work is reproductive justice work. I identify as a sex worker through the art of Tantra, which is a lineage of yoga. I was able to have an amazing teacher who brought healing into my life. And it was really intentional. I knew I wanted to heal from my own traumas, just around sexuality, around abuse, around my own experience. And um, that's when my teacher came into my life. And so like all the other stories and connected to the healing arts that I do, then it stems from my own healing experience first. Because I think without that, then I can't move forward. And it doesn't always have to be that way, right? Someone who does this work doesn't have to have children necessarily to do the work well. Those different aspects of it don't necessarily translate. But for me in my personal journey, a lot of what I do and share does stem from like a specific personal experience. And for this one, sex work definitely did, learning the art of Tantra, learning about, my chakras and, you know, specific organs in my body and how I could use breath work and movement and energy to shift these things in my body to a more harmonious and healing place is revolutionary. This country is really cursed by the Puritan um, perspective of how we've been rooted in that settlers and colonization, and how sexuality across the board has been like demonized in a lot of our indigenous cultures and lineages. And so that's also what called to me in learning, right, how to heal myself through the art of sexual and sensual intimacy. Um, and then it's like it actually makes the world a better place because there's so much darkness that intersects with like um, trafficking, child trafficking, rape. All these really dark things are rooted in our perspective as a people with how we, you know, no longer are connected to the sacredness of sexuality and sensuality, that we have been so deprived of that reclamation and that honor and that power, because there's a power there. It's a highest form of prayer. It can be the highest form of healing. And as a sex worker or someone who also knows how to hold space for people in that realm too, right? Whether it's holding space through information and education about the biology and different dynamics and hormones and chemical aspects of your body, or towards the um, you know, pleasure, exploration, fantasy aspect of ourselves that we want to be seen and we feel most authentic, that connects to our sexuality, or how we're represented in, more of a non-binary way, right? Releasing a lot of the gender roles, being expressive as queer folk, right? As trans folk, as whole beings, then it's still all rooted into sex work, right? And so it's like, for me, I started by reclaiming my story around my fertility, around my cycle, what I wished it would have been, prayed for, and created a spiritual red tent, right? Reclaiming a lot of that. And then healing through my parental journey and being scared of like reproduction and because of my teen pregnancy and all these things, and then reclaiming the honor of what our fertility is, what the seed is, what the egg is, and where that conception really is like a spark of the most holy aspect. And so then I could release a lot of fear that I had around that. And then to hold space for others to teach. And so I've been able to share with other, people who are interested in activating their own empowerment through their sexual expression, or to get into the work and actually create exchanges, right? Exchanges for them, holding space as a sex worker and what that looks like. But then also being able to take that same medicine into maybe like a long term marriage, right? And heal things that are layered in that. So it doesn't have one extension. It extends into so many things. Even last night, having a conversation about how, as young as 1 and 2 years old, right, we're learning how our bodies are working, and even how our parents respond to that exploration and curiosity helps to condition us throughout the rest of our lives. And so a lot of times sex work is just demystifying things, releasing taboos, understanding and understanding that it's a part of our being that should be, honored and acknowledged, even through the simple things of verbiage and being able to say, this is your vulva, this is your vagina, these are the different parts of your body, and not continue with the toxicity of just like undermining our sexual power. And I think that a lot of religious aspects play a part in it. Colonization plays a part in it. I mentioned the Puritan, you know, um, plays a part in it. And so if we learn about our ancestors, my Taino people were very free people. We a very free people who dress in a certain way with, small tops and short skirts. And then if I come into a circle or at the mascal where it's honored for me to have a long skirt and to have my shoulders covered and to have my chest covered, then I honor that. But I see, right, where that oppression is in regards to like our expression with our body and the sovereignty of our body and what our body is capable of doing. And a lot of times that creation comes from sexual expression. And so it's very sacred work. And I'm grateful to share and to have others who have apprenticed with me in regards to what this work is, and what it looks like, because it's different, right? Sex work translates to many different things for many different people. It's not one-sided. But I think just me speaking out about it and also being inclusive about it when it comes to the healing arts that I share and practice, then that's what I can do. That's where I have the control, is to just like bring more transparency around it.
Yeah, definitely, because it's definitely something that people don't really talk about, because it's well, not in like public areas or anything like that. It's not like people are having those conversations out at a coffee shop or something. But I am that kind of person that'll bring a conversation that like, oh wait, maybe we should just like go in a closed room or something. But I'm like, no, I don't feel that way. I feel like we should be able to speak freely and just kind of say what we want to say about a specific subject, especially something like sex work, because it is a connection not only to yourself but also to your partner, and the energy in the space that you're in, and what it is that you're what energy you might be trading off, you know, with another person. And it's very beautiful work, I feel, because it's you're connecting to something that's not always, yeah, I mean, not everybody's walking around like with this energy exuding them, and some people, like you said, it's oppressed within themselves because of their family or because of whatever thing. But also feel it's important to do that work within yourself so that you can be your authentic self. If you want to be out walking around, with Daisy Dukes on and a tube top, and you feel authentically beautiful and wonderful, then that's good for you. Like, that shouldn't be a problem for me, because that's not me. But is that what you usually do at these retreats that you do? I saw that you have something called Diosa de la Luz retreat that you usually do.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes, even in regards to that exchange that you're talking about, it's not even that, it's just holding space, right? That I'm not necessarily even, it's not necessarily even an exchange, in that way of what typically people think it is, right? It's witnessing someone else have their awakening in their root chakra and use that power to manifest and to create and to honor and reclaim within themselves. And me witnessing that. Sometimes that's how you just, even in depth, that, there's so many different layers to it. Yes, Diosa de Luz was exactly that. It is exactly that. It's a movement, and with other guides, other healers who, we honor different parts of, healing wombs and healing women, and what that looks like through dance, through sexual arts, through sensual expression, through journaling, through movement, through meditation, through bringing up, teachings about consent and kink, right? And resources all in one experience. So a retreat, a lot of times, some of my most profound healing experiences is going to ceremony, right? And being with a community of people and in an experience for a certain amount of days. Um, and so, as a retreat curator, there are times where I offer, a healing experience or a retreat of one day, right? And it can just be like a certain period of time. But most of the time, what a retreat is consists of for me is having more than one person guide and be in leadership and share, and that there's, different healing arts that are practiced during that time together as a collective. So, collective healing is so different than individual healing. Individual healing is needed. We've talked mostly about that during our conversation today. But collective healing is like showing up and being in community. And then that becomes something bigger than ourselves, where we choose to combine our own experiences, but we also choose to come together to be vulnerable, and to, to be seen and to be reflected with one another. And so retreats, with Diosa de Luz in particular, look like a span of, like, 1 to 3 days. And there's different areas we can focus on, and always prioritizing rest and having the choice. Do I choose to go to the workshop of mindful movement today and practice some yoga at 8 o'clock this morning? Or does it feel safe and protective for me to stay in my bed in this cabin that I'm sharing with two other people that I'm barely getting to know, and that we're sharing in this collective experience? And so it's through the collective healing that we realize that we don't have to be isolated to heal, that we don't have to just choose one way to heal, that there's many ways and forms, and we get to be, connected to what resonates most with us. And I think that's an important aspect to the retreat work, is like, what did you resonate most? What day, what part, what guide, what healer helped, where you really were touched, and really, and then take that into their lifestyle after leaving the retreat experience. And then even from that collective experience, maybe have more vulnerability to share when their friends were like, well, where were you? What were you doing? Or to their partner, like, I'm gonna go to this retreat and I don't know what to expect, and come back knowing, right, what they resonated with, what they can apply into their life, what they can continue to study. And then they have people that are connected, and resources, and then make friendships, right, and make relationships in that collective way. And so retreat work is very, wow, it's like it's such a big thing to do, to hold space for collective and group work, but it's so important. And I think the more safe places that we have, I like to prioritize, in all the work that I do, Black and Brown folks, is just where I prioritize. We don't have enough space. We don't take up enough space. We're not represented enough, even in today, right? In right now. And so always that means, people gravitate because they're like, oh, I can join this retreat, and may there be other cultural congruencies. There'll be other people who look like me, who we might share similar, backgrounds, ancestors, lineages. Um, and so, I think that's a difference too, because when you go out and look at the retreat world, right, you can find really like bougie and expensive collective experiences and healing experiences. But, it's also sometimes scary, because if you're going in and don't know who the guides are, who the teachers are, who the people are, then and then you go and you could have like a bad experience, right? Or as opposed to Diosa de Luz, we move in a movement where the past experiences and retreats that we've had. Everybody knows somebody. I was referred by this person, or I came because I go to Elena's yoga class, but now I'm learning about body work and anatomy from you, and learning how to twerk and learning how to move my hips from you, and all these things. So far that's been the movement, and I think that's the most powerful thing, and I'll stick with that. I appreciate technology and all the ways that we are able to connect with one another, but I know for sure that one of the most powerful is word of mouth, is through community connection. And sometimes it's deemed as old school, but it's because if someone's telling you that you trust, then you usually will trust to go in that same direction. So the people that have come across you, Adriana, or even through this platform of like finding the healer within, trust you, right? And that's a layer to it. And then we'll trust who you choose to bring into this virtual space to share. And then it just keeps transcending like you know like a web, like the mycelium of the mushrooms, like it's all interconnected, which I've said so many times today. So
No, and it's true, and it is
mhm.
because it's sex work isn't just one specific thing, like you said it is, and
Mhm.
being able to be empowered and to be able to look at yourself as a beautiful person, no matter what you're doing, and learning
Mhm.
to activate your sexuality is so important, and that is really beautiful to me because it's not there's not enough of that. But do you have a retreat coming up like a
We had a spring retreat, and we're looking forward to planning something late fall. Um, and with Diosa de Luz, also accessibility is a really important aspect. And so bringing some, just some workshops and some classes are still connected to what the mission, or like what the intention of Diosa de Luz is, right? Which is full embodied, like healing. Um, and so making sure that things are accessible. The next retreat, late fall, looking to have that in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. And so, taking it to a more secluded place, near the ocean, on ancestral lands, traveling, and kind of like bringing all that aspect into the retreat experience, but as well as offering yoga classes, meditation, moon guided groups, right? Womb healing guided workshops here in Austin and the surrounding areas. And so then that there's like a wider spectrum of people who can tap and tune in, because sometimes we don't have the resources or the availability to be able to plan for like international travel. Or sometimes it's a part of our journey where it's like, that's what I've always wanted to do, is go to the homelands and experience it. So this is perfect for me, right? Or my capacity is maybe I went to the retreat in March and I was really impacted and it was beautiful. And how can I continue to stay connected to those teachers and those guides through these workshops that I'm able to, go on a Wednesday night or something like that. Um, and so I'm trying to, be broad with the movement, because I think that, um, as a curator, it's my responsibility to, what's my intention is to continue to share with as many people as resonate, as many people that can offer an exchange, as many people as that can join and have, some sort of impact in their life, and that will pass on to like the generations to come or their circle. And so in order to do that, then I think I just have to continue to show up in these different ways. Um, and build community is really what's been like calling me. But Diosa de Luz is, something that is, a project of many. And so, and even whether you come in as attending the retreat or as a provider, as a teacher, as a guide, as someone who's bringing the nourishment and the cooking aspect to it, it all matters, right? It all makes for the movement, because it can't continue to exist if there isn't like a desire for it in the community. And then it can't continue to exist if there isn't like sharing about your own experiences through being in my presence and other people's presence, and like maintaining those connections and those friendships. And so, and I think that there's not much else out there right now that is talking about more than one healing modality being accepted in a non-judgmental and safe space. And so we're all going to come in at different places, in our healing journey. And as long as we have an array of resources, an array of ways to try and heal ourselves or learn, then that's the move. That's the intention of it in itself.
Yeah, definitely. And I really appreciate you doing all this work because it's not easy work to do, to plan retreats, to curate all these different things for womb healing. It's something that's entrusted to you by a lot of people because they know the work that you can do. So I encourage anybody listening to go ahead and check you out. You're on Instagram as Elena underscore Mac underscore G, which is on the screen now. But if is there any other way that people can contact you, or a better way for them to connect?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is Elements with Elena, and I also have my doula page, and so I'm able to share a lot of the healing experiences through there, which is Earth Elements with Doula Elena, I think something like that. But I can share all those specifically with you, Adriana. And then just to have like a booking link and, a Facebook page where there's like a phone number for people to call sometimes, just trying to stay really, where people can reach me, right? And people try to reach me through all different ways. But if it's like word of mouth and it's like, oh, hey, I got your phone number, right, from this person, or this is what's happening. But yeah, totally the webpage, the Instagram, the social media, the things, they're out there. So hopefully if it's meant to be, we can connect.
But just to close out, like, do you have anything else to add? Anything else that you'd like to talk about to kind of give people a perspective on who you are and the work you do?
Yeah, I think that, you know, Elements with Elena, what is that, right? And for me, it was it was a way for me to integrate all of the things that I am, all of the things that I share connected to the elements. So when we think for me about the air, I really resonate with mindful movement, with yoga practices, with breathing exercises, and those physicalities, right? The air brings that to us. When I think about the earth, I think about my reproductive justice work. I think about the sex work. I think about, the physical work of moving our body through even yoga and movement, because we are the earth, right? And then when I think about the water, a lot of times the water flows through energy healing, through the sobadas, through the ventosas, through the traditional work in that way. The fire is connected to the sex work, right? To reigniting the fire within ourselves. Um, and the ethers is like the collective work where, with retreats and with healing and community. And so for me, each of the elements is activated through an art that I share. And I've been connected in that way from when I was a child. And so it just feels really good and easy, I think, when we can tap in and tune into what elements we are. When we feel fiery, when we feel watery, when we feel really airy, like what does that mean? What does that symbolize in your life? What's your body calling, for you to do? What's your life calling for you to pay attention to? Because I think the more we heal, the more we create that vibration, the more activated it stays, the larger it expands. And we're all connected to the elements because we're all beings of this planet in this moment. And so that also doesn't matter where we are on borderless lands, right? What part of the earth we are on, we still connected through the elements of air, fire, water, ether, and earth. And so, if nothing else, just remembering that, you know, there's medicine in each one of the elements. There's medicine in each one of our parts of our healing journey. And when we connect to that, and when we remember the elements, we can remember the solidarity and the unity for us, as a people, and that we deserve to be healed. We deserve to heal others, and we deserve to live a life of more softness and rest, regardless of the systems that are in place right now and the things that are not peaceful in this world. But we have a choice. And so, and if if there's people that can help you and that can guide you through their own experiences or through their wisdom, whether that's me or somebody else, to make sure that you can connect with those people. And a lot of times it can come in the form of an elder or a child, to teach you and to help you kind of hone in on what's calling you in life. So when we just listen to each other, I think that's important too. But I'm here and I'm committed to the work and my community. I'm committed to my life's work and purpose. I'm really grateful. I honor my teachers. I honor the land that I practice on. And I honor all of the families and the people that I have connected with in this journey. And that I'm committed and I'll continue to move forward. And maybe we'll cross paths in one of our elemental alignments.
Yes, definitely. And I really appreciate all the work that you do as a doula, as a in sex work and all the things that you do just to help other people to be a healer and things like that. I really appreciate the impact that you give on other people is eminent, and that's something that I feel is going to keep growing for you. And but I want to thank you again for giving us this interview and giving us a scope into what kind of work that you do and how you can help people. So I once again encourage anybody listening to go out and check out Elena and see what she can offer you, or how you can maybe connect her with someone else that might need some help with any of the work that she does, which is all encompassing and very, very thorough. So I thank you again, Elena, and I really appreciate all the work that you do.
Thank you, Adriana. It was dope. See you around.
Peace.